It was a bright Saturday afternoon when three friends, all around the same age and growing up in a quiet neighborhood, found themselves wandering the streets of their small town. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting long shadows across the sidewalk as they made their way down the familiar blocks. Their laughter echoed through the empty street as they kicked a soccer ball back and forth, each of them trying to outdo the other in friendly competition. They had spent the afternoon together as they always did after school, playing sports, telling jokes, and sharing stories. Their neighborhood was peaceful. People knew each other, greeted each other on the street, and looked out for one another. Most of the houses were simple, modest homes. It wasn't a wealthy neighborhood, but it was filled with people who took care of one another, and that was what mattered most. For the boys, life was simple. They didn't think much about money or the things they didn't have. What mattered to them was their friendship and the bond they shared, along with the love and care their families provided. As they walked home that afternoon, the three friends were unaware that the next few minutes would change their lives forever. They were on the lookout for their next adventure, perhaps a game of basketball or a trip to the park. But instead, they were about to cross paths with someone who would alter the course of their lives in a way they never expected. They were nearing the corner of the street when they spotted a car parked on the side of the road. It was a sleek black sports car, nothing like the usual cars they saw in their neighborhood. The kind of car that looked far too expensive for the area, with shiny chrome rims and a polished exterior. They had never seen a car like this parked here before, and it immediately piqued their curiosity. The car wasn't moving. As they got closer, they could see the man inside sitting behind the wheel. His face was calm, but the frustration was clear in his eyes. His hand rested on the steering wheel, and there was a faint sense of urgency in his posture. It wasn't like he was stranded or in immediate danger, but something wasn't right. As they approached the car, one of the boys hesitated for a second. "Do you think he's okay?" he asked, looking at his friends. "Maybe," another boy replied. "He looks a little stuck. I bet he has a flat tire or something." They walked closer, unsure of how to help. It wasn't every day they came across a car like this, and it wasn't like they were car experts. But the man was alone, and he looked like he could use some help. As they got closer to the car, the man looked up and noticed the boys standing by the sidewalk. "Hey there," the man called out, his voice calm but with a hint of frustration. "I seem to have gotten a flat tire. I don't suppose you guys know how to change one, do you?" The boys glanced at each other, unsure at first, but then one of them nodded with a small smile. "We can try to help," he said. "We've watched our dads do it a bunch of times." The man looked surprised, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Well, I sure appreciate the offer," he said, getting out of the car. "I'll be honest, I'm not great with this kind of thing." They all gathered around the car, inspecting the flat tire. The man stood back for a moment, watching the boys. They seemed so young, but there was an energy in the way they moved, focused and ready to help. "Do you need anything?" one of the boys asked, noticing the man's hesitation as he rummaged through the car's trunk. "I've got a spare tire, but I don't have the right tools to get it on," the man said, looking a bit defeated. "I thought I could manage, but it looks like I was wrong." The boys didn't hesitate. One of them ran to the back of his house and grabbed the basic tools they needed, tools they had seen their dads use to fix a car or two. They got to work quickly. The man watched, impressed by how quickly they understood what to do. He didn't expect much help. After all, these were just kids, right? But the way they worked together, communicating silently, made it clear they had done this before, even if they hadn't actually done it. The boys worked in unison, loosening the lug nuts and lifting the car with a jack they had borrowed from one of their houses. It wasn't the smoothest job. They didn't have all the experience they needed, but they got it done. Slowly, the old tire came off and the spare went on. The boys were careful, making sure everything was tightened properly. They didn't want to leave anything to chance. The man looked at them with genuine admiration. "You guys are something else," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "I can't believe you actually did it. I was ready to call for a tow truck." "Don't worry about it," one of the boys said, shrugging it off. "We're happy to help." Once the job was done, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out some cash. "I'm really grateful. Here, let me give you something for your time and effort." The boys, a little embarrassed, shook their heads quickly. No, you don't need to pay us. We just wanted to help out." The man looked at them for a moment, surprised by their refusal. "Well, I have to admit that's rare. Most people would take the money, no questions asked." "It's okay," one of the boys said with a smile. "We're just glad we could help." The man seemed to think for a moment before a small, thoughtful smile spread across his face. "All right then," he said. "I respect that. Let me at least do this. I've got some contacts, and if you guys ever need anything, if you want to learn about business or get ahead in life, just let me know. I'll help you out." The boys looked at each other, unsure of what to say. They didn't know exactly what the man meant, but the offer seemed genuine. After all, they had just helped him with something simple, changing a tire. Why would someone so important want to return the favor in such a big way? "Thanks," one of the boys said after a long pause. "We really appreciate it." The man smiled and shook each of their hands before getting back into his car. "I'll be in touch," he said as he started the engine. "Take care, guys." As the car drove off down the street, the boys stood there for a moment, stunned by what had just happened. They hadn't expected anything from the man when they stopped to help. They had simply done what felt right, offering a hand to someone in need. And yet this man, a stranger, someone who could have easily ignored them, had given them something far more valuable than money. He had offered them a chance to learn, to grow, to make something of themselves. The boys looked at each other in silence for a moment, their minds spinning. They didn't know exactly what the future held, but one thing was certain: their lives had just changed in ways they couldn't yet understand. What started as a small act of kindness, a simple offer to help a stranger, had led to something far bigger than they had ever imagined. And they had no idea how this encounter would impact their future, but they were eager to find out. The next morning, after the incredible day they had experienced, the boys returned to their usual routine. They were back outside playing basketball, just as they had done many times before. The excitement of the amusement park was still fresh in their minds, but now the reality of their everyday lives had settled in. They went through the usual motions, shooting hoops, laughing and joking with each other as they always did. But something felt different. Each of them had their own thoughts running through their minds. The youngest boy, who had always been quiet, couldn't stop thinking about the kindness that Mr. Howard had shown them. He wondered how many people in the world would go out of their way to help others the way Mr. Howard had helped them. The thought lingered, making him realize that it wasn't just about the trip or the dinner. It was about the genuine care and respect that Mr. Howard had given them, something they hadn't often seen in their own community. The middle boy, who had always been the one to act first, couldn't stop thinking about the business card that Mr. Howard had given him. He kept it in his pocket, tucked away like a secret. He was too young to fully understand what business people did or how the world of adults worked. But the idea that a man like Mr. Howard could recognize their efforts and treat them like equals was something he would never forget. It made him think that maybe one day he could do something just as significant for someone else. And the oldest boy, always the leader of the group, was thinking the hardest. He couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter with Mr. Howard had opened up a door for him, one that could lead to something much bigger. He wasn't sure what it was yet, but he knew it was important. He had always dreamed of making something of himself, of being successful in a way that would make his family proud. The attention and kindness they had received from someone like Mr. Howard made him wonder if maybe he could start on that path sooner than he had thought. As the afternoon wore on, the boys went back to their games. But the conversation kept drifting back to the events of the previous day. They talked about the rides at the amusement park, the feeling of VIP treatment, and how it all seemed so unreal. It was like something out of a movie. Yet it was real. It was all because of the simple act of helping a stranger with a flat tire. As they spoke, the familiar sound of a car engine drew their attention. This time it was different. It wasn't just any car. The sleek black SUV from the day before rolled up the street, slowly, as if it were looking for something. The boys froze, their hearts beating a little faster. They couldn't believe it. Was Mr. Howard really coming back? The car pulled up in front of the house and stopped. The door opened and a tall man in a suit stepped out. He was the same man from the day before, Mr. Howard. But today he didn't just look like a businessman. There was a sense of purpose in his step as he approached the group of boys, who were now standing together, unsure of what to expect. "Hey guys," Mr. Howard said, his smile warm and genuine. "I hope I'm not interrupting your game." The boys quickly shook their heads, still processing the fact that he was standing right there in front of them again. The youngest one was the first to speak. a little shy but excited nonetheless. No, it's okay, he said. I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Howard replied, looking at each of them. I wanted to check in and see how you all were doing after the big day yesterday. The boys couldn't stop talking about the trip, all of them eager to share the experience with him. The middle boy went on and on about the rides, while the youngest one mentioned the food they had eaten. The oldest boy simply nodded, his mind already thinking about the future, about how he could take the lessons from yesterday and turn them into something more. Mr. Howard listened patiently, laughing along with them, clearly pleased with the joy they had gotten from the trip. But then, as the conversation slowed, he looked at the boys with a more serious expression. You know, he began, his voice thoughtful, you three are something special, not just because of how you helped me, but because of how you work together. I've met a lot of people in my life, but I can see something in you three. You've got heart, and that's rare. The boys looked at each other, unsure of what to say. They hadn't expected any recognition, let alone praise from someone like Mr. Howard. It wasn't just that he was an adult, but that he was a successful businessman, someone who had built his life from the ground up. For him to say that they had heart made them feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. Mr. Howard continued, I've been thinking about you all, and I want to offer you something. I know you're young and there's a lot of life ahead of you, but sometimes the right opportunity can come along when you least expect it. I want to give you a chance to experience something more, something that will help you get started on the right path. I can't promise everything will be easy, but if you're open to it, I think you'll learn a lot. The boys exchanged glances, their eyes wide with disbelief. What was he talking about? What kind of opportunity could someone like them possibly get? Mr. Howard smiled, sensing their confusion. I don't want to give too much away yet, but I want to offer you the chance to work with me. Not full-time, of course, you're still kids, but there are ways you can learn and grow. If you want to, we can start by introducing you to some people who can help guide you, teach you skills that will set you up for the future. For a moment, there was silence. The boys couldn't believe what they were hearing. They had helped change a flat tire, and now they were being offered something that could change their lives forever. Finally, the oldest boy found his voice. You're serious? He asked, his voice a little shaky. Mr. Howard nodded. Absolutely. I know you may not fully understand it right now, but think about it. You're young, but you've got the right mindset, and I want to help you keep that. So, what do you say? The boys stood there, processing what Mr. Howard had just said. It was a lot to take in, but in that moment they realized something. They weren't just three kids who had helped someone out of kindness. They were being offered a chance to create something better for themselves, a chance to learn and grow beyond what they had ever imagined. After a long pause, the middle boy spoke up. We're in. We'll do it, Mr. Howard smiled. Good choice. I'm looking forward to seeing what you all can do. As Mr. Howard drove away, the boys stood there watching the SUV disappear down the street. They couldn't believe what had just happened. They had helped a man with a flat tire, and now, their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't even imagine. That night, as they sat together in their living room, the reality of the day hit them all at once. They weren't just a group of boys anymore. They were a team that had been recognized for their kindness, their ability to work together, and now, they were on the cusp of something much bigger. This wasn't just about a flat tire. It was about the future, and they had just been given a chance to take their first step toward it. The morning after the incident with the flat tire, the boys were still buzzing with the excitement of helping someone in need. They didn't expect anything in return. They had just done what they felt was right. But, as they were sitting down to lunch at home, the sound of an engine revving loudly outside caught their attention. It was a black SUV, a vehicle they didn't recognize, pulling up in front of their house. The three boys stared out of the window, curious but uncertain. The vehicle was sleek, shiny, and professional looking, completely different from the old trucks and cars that usually pass through their neighborhood. It came to a stop and the engine shut off with a low hum. One of the boys, the oldest of the three, leaned closer to the window, squinting. "Who's that?" he muttered. Before anyone could answer, the door of the SUV opened and a man stepped out. The man was dressed in a sharp, expensive-looking suit, his shoes polished to a shine. As he approached the house, the boys recognized him instantly. It was the same man they had helped with the flat tire just the day before. The one in the luxury car. The boys quickly gathered by the door, exchanging confused looks. None of them had expected to see him again, and certainly not like this. Why was he here? Did he need help again? They had only helped him out of kindness, and now this was turning into something completely unexpected. As the man came up the driveway, he smiled at them warmly, his eyes lighting up when he saw the boys. He walked up to the door and knocked gently. One of the boys opened it cautiously, a little unsure of what to expect. "Hello, fellas," the man said with a friendly grin. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." The boys just stared at him for a moment, still surprised by his presence. The man chuckled softly, noticing their hesitation. "I'm Charles," he said, extending his hand. "I just wanted to come by and personally thank you for helping me yesterday. You didn't have to, but you did, and that means a lot." The boys hesitated for a second, but one of them shook his hand. No problem," he said, still trying to process what was going on. "We just saw you needed help." "Didn't think it was a big deal," Charles nodded thoughtfully. "Well, it was a big deal to me, and I don't forget acts of kindness like that." He paused for a moment, glancing at the house behind the boys. "I wanted to give something back. You've all got a good heart, and that's something worth rewarding." The boys exchanged puzzled glances. This was all starting to feel like a dream, something they never thought could happen. They hadn't done anything for recognition. They simply wanted to help someone out. But now, here was this wealthy man standing in front of their home, offering something in return. Charles stepped back slightly, his expression turning more serious but still friendly. "I've got some resources, some connections that could help you out. Maybe get you into a program or get you a scholarship for school. I've got some people I work with, and they can make sure you all get a chance to reach your potential." The boy stood silent for a moment, the weight of his words slowly sinking in. They were just kids from a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was enough. Now this man was offering to change everything. "Are you serious?" one of the boys asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and hope. Charles smiled. "I'm serious. You've got a good future ahead of you, I can see it, and I'm willing to help you get there. Education, mentorship, whatever you need. If you're willing to put in the work, I can give you the resources to make it happen." For a long moment, the boys stood there, unsure how to respond. This kind of opportunity felt unreal. It was something out of a movie, not something they'd ever imagined happening to them. Finally, the oldest of the three spoke up. "We don't know what to say," he said quietly. "This is crazy," Charles chuckled softly. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that the offer is there. Take some time to think about it. I'm not asking for anything in return. I just believe in giving people a chance when they deserve it." He paused and looked at each of the boys, his expression sincere. "And trust me, you guys deserve it." With that, Charles handed the boys a business card, a simple one with only his name and number printed on it. "Call me whenever you're ready. I'm here to help. But no pressure, okay?" The boys stood there for a moment, still in shock. This was so much more than they had expected from a simple act of kindness. They hadn't realized that helping someone out could lead to something like this. But Charles had given them a glimpse of what was possible, a way out of their circumstances, a chance for a better future. As Charles turned to leave, the boys stood there holding the business card, unsure of what would come next. They had no idea what the future held, but one thing was clear. This was a turning point. They knew their lives would never be the same. The next morning, after the incredible offer they had received, the three friends, Aaron, David, and Jamal, woke up to a mix of excitement and confusion. They had spent the night thinking about the opportunities that had been placed in front of them. The scholarships, the internships, and the mentorship were all so overwhelming, and it felt like a dream. It was as if everything they had known about their lives, their futures, and the paths they had envisioned had suddenly shifted. As they sat down for breakfast, each one lost in their thoughts, they couldn't help but feel the weight of what Mr. Thompson had offered them. It wasn't just about going to a good school or landing a job in a big company. It was about changing the course of their lives forever. They had grown up in a neighborhood where the future often seemed uncertain, where dreams were sometimes too big to chase. But now the chance to go beyond their circumstances was right in front of them. Aaron, the most outgoing of the group, was the first to break the silence. "Can you believe it? One moment we're helping some guy with a flat tire, and the next thing we know he's offering us all of this. It feels unreal." David, who had always been the more reserved one, nodded slowly. I know, but we've got to make the most of it. We can't just waste this opportunity. I've always wanted to do something big, but I didn't know how to get there. This could be the way. Jamal, who had been quiet up until this point, finally spoke up. Yeah, but it's a lot to take in. What if we mess up? What if we're not good enough? Aaron placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, offering reassurance. We've got this. We've helped people before. We can help ourselves now. We just need to stick together and keep pushing forward. The conversation went on for a while, with each of them sharing their hopes and fears about the future. They knew this wasn't just a handout, it was a challenge. Mr. Thompson was offering them a chance to prove themselves, and that thought weighed heavily on all of them. But they also knew that this kind of opportunity didn't come around often. They couldn't just let it slip away. Later that day, the boys made the decision. They were going to accept Mr. Thompson's offer. It wasn't an easy choice, and they still had questions about how everything would work, but they were ready to take the leap. They understood that this was their chance to make something of themselves, to go beyond the limits they had always felt. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and new beginnings. Mr. Thompson's office became a place they visited regularly, with each meeting filled with discussions about their future. He helped them choose schools, connected them with people in various industries, and even arranged internships with some of his business partners. It was a whirlwind of activity, but in the midst of it, the boys remained grounded, constantly reminding each other of the importance of the journey they had embarked on. For the first time, they felt like they were in control of their futures. The fear and uncertainty that had once clouded their minds began to fade as they focused on the opportunities ahead. They spent their evenings studying, preparing for the challenges that would come in the months and years to follow. It wasn't easy, but they knew they couldn't afford to waste a single moment. As the weeks passed, their lives began to transform. They were accepted into some of the best schools in the city, and their internships opened doors to experiences they never imagined. They met people who encouraged them, people who believed in their potential, and people who helped them navigate the sometimes complicated world of business and education. The connections they made were invaluable, and the boys quickly realized that they were not alone on this journey. They had a support system, people who cared about their success and were willing to help them get there. One day, while Aaron was working on a project at the internship Mr. Thompson had arranged for him, he received a call. It was from Jamal. "Hey, you're not going to believe this," Jamal said, excitement clear in his voice. "I just got a scholarship offer from one of the top universities. They want me to be a part of their leadership program." Aaron couldn't help but smile. "That's amazing, man. You've worked hard for this." "I couldn't have done it without you guys," Jamal replied. "We're all in this together." David had similar news. He had landed an internship with a major tech company, something he had dreamed of for years. His hard work and determination had paid off, and he was finally getting the chance to explore his passion for technology. It was the start of something big for him, and he couldn't have been more thrilled. As for Aaron, his journey was just beginning. He had been offered a full scholarship to attend a prestigious university, and with it, the chance to pursue his dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur. He had always wanted to create something that would make a difference, and now, with the resources and support available to him, he knew it was possible. But the boys didn't forget where they came from. They knew that their success wasn't just their own. It was a product of the people who had helped them along the way. They continued to support each other, cheering each other on through every success and every challenge. They knew that their friendship was the foundation of everything they were achieving, and they made a pact to always have each other's backs, no matter where life took them. The months went by, and the boys grew more confident in themselves and their abilities. They were no longer the same kids who had walked home from school unsure of what their future held. They were now young men with a purpose, driven by the desire to make the most of every opportunity that came their way. One evening, after a long day of work and study, the boys gathered at Jamal's house again. They sat around the living room, reflecting on how far they had come. They talked about their goals for the future, the challenges they still faced, and the ways they were going to give back to their community. They had always known that success was important, but now they understood that it wasn't just about personal achievement, it was about using what they had to help others. "I think about all the people who never get the chances we've had. David said, his voice thoughtful. We've got to make sure we're not just doing this for ourselves. We've got to help others too. Aaron nodded in agreement. We've got to pay it forward. Mr. Thompson showed us that there's always a way to make a difference even when things seem impossible. And we can do the same for someone else. Jamal smiled, looking at his friends. We started out by helping a guy with a flat tire. Who knew that would turn into all of this? The room was filled with laughter and excitement as they realized just how much had changed in such a short time. They knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be setbacks and challenges, but they were no longer afraid. They had each other, and they had the belief that with hard work, kindness, and determination, they could achieve anything. As the night went on, they made plans for the future, knowing that no matter where life took them, they would always have the bond they shared. They had started with a simple act of kindness, and that one decision had set them on a path to success. They knew they would never forget where they came from, or the people who had helped them along the way. And just as Mr. Thompson had given them a chance, they would one day do the same for others, passing on the kindness that had changed their lives forever. The days that followed their unexpected encounter with the billionaire were a blur for the three boys. Trey, Malik, and Devin had always known the value of hard work and friendship, but now their lives were taking a turn they never could have predicted. It felt like a dream they were still waking up from. After the billionaire had offered them a scholarship, the three boys were left in a state of shock and disbelief. It wasn't just the scholarship itself that overwhelmed them. It was the way their entire world seemed to shift in an instant. They had gone from being regular high school students, unsure of what the future would hold, to having an undeniable opportunity to change their lives forever. And it all began with something as simple as helping a stranger fix a flat tire. It took a few days for the reality to fully set in. The paperwork came first, followed by numerous meetings with school officials, family discussions, and countless phone calls. For the boys, it was a whirlwind of emotions, excitement, fear, and the kind of uncertainty that accompanies any drastic change. But despite the doubts that crept in from time to time, there was an undeniable feeling of hope that kept them going. Each day the boys would walk into their new school, their heads held a little higher. At first the transition was difficult. They were surrounded by kids who had wealth, connections, and opportunities they had never even dreamed of. The boys were used to seeing kids with new clothes, expensive gadgets, and the latest tech. But here they were, not just entering this new world, but trying to find their place in it. It felt overwhelming at times, almost like they didn't belong. But despite the challenges, they refused to let this new life intimidate them. They focused on their studies, diving deep into their lessons and staying up late to finish their assignments. They knew that this was their chance to prove that they were more than capable of succeeding. They kept each other grounded, constantly encouraging one another and reminding each other of the promise they had made to never forget their roots. As time passed, the boys began to adapt. The awkwardness slowly faded away as they formed connections with teachers and classmates who saw beyond the boys' background and instead recognized their potential. They found a group of friends who respected them for their work ethic and their drive. And though they were still the new kids on the block, it didn't take long for people to recognize that they were there to make the most of this opportunity, not waste it. Their internship with the Billionaire's company became another turning point. The first day, they walked into the sleek high-rise office with wide eyes. The building itself was a testament to the success the Billionaire had achieved. It was nothing like their neighborhood or the schools they had attended. The floors gleamed, the walls were adorned with modern art, and the entire atmosphere screamed success. But despite all the glamour, the boys focused on what mattered, the lessons they were learning. The Billionaire, who had become something of a mentor, didn't just tell them about business, he showed them. He introduced them to people who would help shape their future, gave them tasks that pushed them to learn, and most importantly, he treated them like equals. The boys couldn't believe how much they were absorbing, not just from their work, but from the way the Billionaire carried himself. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a person who valued integrity, hard work, and giving back to others. The internship opened their eyes to a world they never thought possible. They learned about leadership, teamwork, marketing, and the intricacies of running a successful business. What once seemed like a distant dream was now a reality they could touch, feel, and understand. They learned how every department in the company functioned, and by the time the summer came to an end, they had not only gained valuable work experience but had also formed relationships with key people who would continue to guide them in the future. Despite all the opportunities that had opened up for them, the boys never lost sight of who they were or where they came from. They remained in close touch with their community, never forgetting the friends and neighbors who had supported them. They also realized that not everyone had the same opportunities they had been given, and that understanding fueled a new passion within them, one to give back, to help others who were in the same position they once were. They decided to start a mentoring program for kids in their old neighborhood. The boys had always understood the importance of education, but they now realized that it was the key to unlocking doors that many young people in their community had never even seen. They began tutoring younger kids, offering guidance, and even setting up workshops on everything from basic study habits to how to approach potential scholarship opportunities. Their message was clear. If they could make it, so could others. Their initiative didn't go unnoticed. The community began to take notice of these three young men who had not only succeeded but had turned around to help others succeed as well. People were inspired by their story, and soon other local organizations and businesses started offering their support. The boys were now leading by example, showing others that no matter where you come from, with hard work and dedication, anything was possible. The Billionaire, who had seen the boys grow from hopeful students to leaders in their community, was incredibly proud of them. He offered them more resources to help expand their program, giving them the tools they needed to reach even more kids. He also continued to check in on them, offering advice and encouragement as they ventured into new projects. As the years passed, Trey, Malik, and Devin finished their schooling, graduated with honors, and entered the workforce. They had done more than just earn degrees and land internships. They had created something that would outlast them, a legacy of hope, change, and inspiration for others. Their program continued to grow, and the impact they made on their community was undeniable. They helped pave the way for other young people, showing them that there was more to life than the obstacles that seemed to stand in their way. By the time the boys stood together at their college graduation, they could hardly believe how far they had come. They were no longer just the kids who helped fix a billionaire's flat tire. They were now successful, educated, and driven young men who had the ability to change not just their lives, but the lives of others. They looked back at that one moment when they had helped a stranger on the side of the road and realized that it had set everything in motion. The flat tire had led them to an education, to opportunities, to mentors, and ultimately, to the power to make a difference. Standing together in their caps and gowns, the boys shared a quiet moment of reflection. They knew their journey wasn't over. They had a long road ahead of them, full of challenges and opportunities. But no matter what came next, they would always remember the lesson that had shaped their lives. One simple act of kindness had the power to change ever